What's up everyone, Andrew Baena here, and on today's video we're going to be taking a look at this. This is the brand new device from Neural DSP and it is called the Nano Cortex. This is a brand new multi-effects pedal in addition to a capture device. It just came out. I saw it a couple of weeks ago at Sweetwater for the big unveiling that we got to see it a little bit early, and Neural DSP sent one over to me as well, so I'm very happy to be making this video. So as usual for my videos, you've already heard how the Nano Cortex sounds in a full demo mix. Next up we're going to talk about some of the specs and features of this device, and of course show you some soloed tone clips as well. The Nano Cortex has a lot of features and I will be going over almost all of them. I might not be going into super depth on some of them, but I will be showing you how to make tones, how the general workflow goes, and stuff like that. It might seem a little intimidating at first, but it is actually pretty easy to use, especially when you pair it with the app, so I'm going to show you all that in this video. So with that being said, let's get into it and see what the Nano Cortex is and how to use it. Okay, so we've switched over to my desk view. I have my Aristides 080S. This is a 8-string guitar tuned to drop E with a single Lundgren M8 pickup. Just for the record, I know that on this camera showing the pedal, this knob is going to be flashing because it is clipping a little bit. That's just my pickup going into the input of the thing. Nothing to do with the pedal itself. These pickups are just really hot. But I personally don't mind. I think it sounds great still. So moving on. So one of the coolest things about the Nano Cortex is that you can power it with a 9-volt power supply or a USB-C power supply. So as you saw in that intro demo clip, I actually had it plugged directly into my MacBook Air, and that was enough to power it. It needed no external power or anything like that. So you can totally use this on the go, which is again why I filmed that video in the forest to show that. And you could of course plug it into like a portable USB-C battery or something like that as well. But for now, I've just plugged it in using a 9-volt battery because I have it at my desk at home anyways. On the back of the device, we also have 2 1/4-inch outputs. So we have output right and left accordingly, and then an input for your guitar. As for the face of the pedal, we have 2 foot switches down here. So this one is for preset 1A, 1B, 2A, and 2B. I almost said 2C, that doesn't make sense. So you can have up to 4 presets assigned to these 2 foot switches at all times, and you can change these to whatever presets you want. And then we'll talk about the basic controls. So we have gain, bass, mid, treble. So these are your typical amp controls that you would expect to see on pretty much any amp. So those control the capture of the amp that you are using, whatever it is. And then of course the level is your overall output level. And then last but not least, we have the amount knob right here. And what this actually does is it controls the amount of effects being applied. So there are actually 5 built-in effects on the Nano Cortex. We have a noise gate, a transpose, a modulator, a reverb, and a delay. And you can control all 5 of those using this one knob and this button right here. So when you're on a preset, you can actually see which effects are being used. So I'm going to switch to this, which is the rhythm tone preset that I was using during that clip. So you can see that the first light on this FX bank, I guess you would call it, is flashing because that means that that effect is on and the rest are off because they are not being used. So in this case, this is the noise gate, and you can see that my amount is at max. And if you turn this knob, you can set the noise gate to be wherever you want it to be. And if you change the value, this save light will start glowing to let you know that you've made a change. And if you want to save it, you go ahead and click that, of course. And if you wanted to add more effects, so again, this one is only using the noise gate. Let's say we wanted to add a transpose. We would click the FX button to move over to effect number 2, which in this case is transpose. You press and hold it to turn it on. And then now you can control the level of transpose accordingly. Same thing for modulation, delay, and reverb. And then if you want to discard those changes, obviously just do that and switch back to the preset and everything will reset. The other cool thing is it doesn't matter where the knobs are positioned on your pedal. The LED ring surrounding each knob is what the value is actually at. So you can see, for example, if I have the bass knob like all the way there, but I switch back, it's still going to light up the way it is according to the preset. So the actual knob doesn't matter. You can move those around freely. So basically the pedal is just constantly keeping track of what your preset values actually are versus how your knobs are shown. So it gives you a good indication of you know, which level you're at on each knob. The Nano Cortex can also store 5 impulse responses, and you can select those using this foot switch, but rotating it as if it was a knob. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or bypass, of course. And then likewise for the capture section, same thing. You can rotate this pedal to select which amp capture you would like to use or bypass it completely. One of the other coolest features about the Nano Cortex is that it is a fully capable capture device, meaning you can create your own Neural DSP captures using the Nano Cortex, so you can capture existing amps or pedals right onto here, and then those can be available on your Cortex Cloud app. Okay, so that's already a lot of information, but we have a little bit more to go through. So a lot of the features of this pedal really come to life when you open up the Cortex Cloud app, which I strongly recommend using. So I have it open right here. This is a beta version of the software, so it might look a little bit different than yours does. When you open up the app, you can see the different presets that you have selected here. So again, I was using 2A as my rhythm tone, Genty Boy, because I'm really creative, or Genty Boy Octave, which is the same tone, but with a transpose feature. And then I actually just used one of the presets that was included in the pedal for that clean tone because I thought it sounded great. And this crunch one, I'm not really using that. That was just the default one, and I never changed it. So if you scroll down on the device, you can also see the captures that you are currently using. Again, there are 5 different banks, meaning that there are 5 options with 5 captures each. So you can scroll left or right to see all of the ones that you have preloaded onto your device. And then of course you can load more onto here from the Cortex Cloud. So if you download ones made by some other user, you can put those in here, or if you captured one yourself, of course. And then for impulse responses, these are the 5 impulse responses available. Again, you can put any impulse response on here, whether it is a capture on the cloud or just a regular old impulse response file. And then moving down to the bottom, we can see the effects section. So this is where you see your noise gate, pitch shifter, modulation, delay, and reverb. So from here, if you don't want to control it on the pedal, this is a little bit easier. So let's say noise gate, for example, you can see that the noise reduction dial is there, and you can actually control every aspect of this from the app itself. Same with the pitch shifter. So let's say we want to turn that on and then go over here. You can control the mix, semitones, high pass, and low pass. The other nice thing about using these features on the app is it does give you a couple of more options that are not available on the pedal. So again, on the pedal itself, you only have this amount dial for the pitch shifter, let's say. Whereas when you open the pitch shifter section of the amp, you can see that there are a few other options that you cannot access on the Nano Cortex pedal itself, which is again why I recommend definitely using the app if possible. And then same with the modulation section. Why is that hard to say? Again, there's a couple more options here which are not available on the pedal, and same with delay, and same with reverb. And then of course you can save this preset from this app as well without even having to touch the pedal. So last but not least, let's say that you have your own capture or a capture that you downloaded from the app that you want to load onto the Nano Cortex. What you can do is go over to this library section, and this is where you can see your own neural captures, whether they're from the factory, ones that you've done yourself, or ones that you downloaded, and same with the impulse responses all right here. So let's say, for example, I wanted to put on one of my neural captures onto the Nano Cortex. So you can see here, here's a few that I've downloaded. The Granny Fire from Mike Stringer, shout out to him. Actually a capture of a Nameless suite from their plugin, and then my Rev 100p purple blue channel, which I tried to capture myself. I wouldn't recommend downloading it though, because it's definitely not perfect. So just for an example, let's say we wanted this Granny Fire one on the pedal. So we would go to like that. And then from this menu, we can actually add this capture to the Nano Cortex. So you can select which bank you want it in and where you want it to go. So let's say, for example, we wanted to replace the Nameless suite. There we go. So then if we go back to the main section of the pedal, you can now see that on the capture section, it's actually on the Nano Cortex itself in bank 1. Okay, so now that I've explained most of the specs and features of the Nano Cortex, I'm gonna show you the tones that I was using. So again, this is the rhythm tone that I was using, which sounds like this. So I thought that sounded really good, and this was actually using one of the stock captures that came on the Nano Cortex. Next up, I had the same preset except with the transpose feature enabled. It's gonna sound really weird, but it was doing an octave up. We're gonna change that and you know, go lower instead, because you can never go wrong with going even lower. So the transpose feature actually worked really well, and it looks like it has an octave going either up or down, which should be more than enough for most people. Okay, next up, like I said, this is actually one of the default presets that's included in the Nano Cortex called Clean My Dreams, and I actually thought it sounded really good, so I made no changes to it. So my clean tone sounded like this. So yeah, I thought that this preset sounded pretty awesome personally, and I didn't really feel like I had to make any changes, but of course, you totally can. So next up, I'm gonna show you a very quick example of how you would obviously change tones on this. So we're gonna go back to that main rhythm tone right there. Again, sounds like this. So let's say we wanted to change things up. Obviously, when you're on this preset, you can mess around with the gain, the bass, which is way too high. Oops, I meant to do that. So let's put everything at noon, for example, and go from there. So now that everything's at noon, and as you'd expect, if we bump up the gain, sweet. So that's pretty much how you would obviously change the dials for the capture. Next up on the amount knob, this is where you control the level of the effects. So for example, on this tone, again, I only have the noise gate. If we turn that completely off, it's going to be not very ideal. And if we crank it all the way up, which is what I want. And again, let's say we wanted to keep this preset but add in some transpose. We would click the effects button once to move over to the transpose feature, press and hold it to turn it on, and then now we can control the amount of transpose. So let's say we wanted, instead of drop E, do like, you know, double drop A. Obviously ridiculous, but you can totally do that. And let's say that this is where you're happy with your tone. You would obviously press that save button and overwrite your current preset. Okay, that's gonna do it for this video. Thanks again to Neural DSP for sponsoring this video and sending over a Nano Cortex to me. If you wanna pick one of these up for yourself, be sure to use the link in the description and the pinned comment below. It would help my channel a lot. And of course, last but not least, a massive thank you to all my Patreon members whose names are on the screen at this point in time. If you're interested in getting audio downloads, guitar tabs, stems, or a shout out on the screen, you can find all of that over on my Patreon page, which is also linked in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.